Welcome to Criminal Gines, a comedic true crime watch-along podcast where we watch Criminal Minds, all 15 seasons, and discuss the true crime that can be linked, however indirectly, to the episode. We're your hosts, Stacey Johnson and Veronica Shea, and this week we're joined by Emma Oliver in discussing Season 1, Episode 18, Somebody's Watching. So Emma, welcome back. You're our first repeat. Stacey unfortunately can't be with us. She's not feeling very well today. So it's just going to be me. I'm so sorry.
Thank you for having me back.
You're welcome.
I feel honored.
Yeah, you should. We tried to give you a better Shemar Moore episode.
He was so fine in this episode.
Yeah, there it is.
I was like, all right, I get it.
Yeah, there it is. Even though it was a Reed episode, it was a pretty good Shemar episode too. He showed up. But yeah, let's just jump right in with the recap. So we're doing episode 18, Somebody's Watching. We're in LA, which is fun for LA people because we know where they're shooting. But Reed and Gideon are in town. They're running a training session on profiling for the LAPD. And they're at an art gallery that's owned by someone Reed went to high school with. And there's an up-and-coming starlet, Lila, who walks into the gallery. And her scary artist friend takes a liking to Gideon, even
That's where I come
in. Even though she's apparently a lesbian.
She said she was like, I think I wrote it down. Yeah, if I wasn't a lesbian.
Yeah.
It was wild. I'm sure we'll come back to that.
She was really coming on to Gideon. And so Gideon got scared. And Reed and Lila were like chatting cute. Is this a thing? And Gideon was like, we have to go. And Reed's like, but. And he's like, get the fuck out. We're leaving. This girl went to the bathroom. This is my exit strategy before she wears my skin as a suit. Let's go.
The true villain in this one is that lesbian. And I hate that. But like, honestly, representation comes in many forms.
Yeah. It's just nice to be seen in Hollywood, I think.
I love, as a toxic queer person, I love that. I love that for me.
So the next day, they're talking to the LAPD, and a blonde actress girl is waiting for her script somewhere else, not where they're talking with the LAPD. The delivery guy comes, holds her at gunpoint, like bursts into her house, kills her. Her boyfriend comes in and finds her, and the killer kills him too. Reed and Gideon are about to go to the airport when the detective gets the call about this double homicide, so they go to the crime scene with him. The star was shot in the head with a .22 caliber, and they find out that there have been a few other cases the past few months with the same weapon and the same MO. A film producer and another young actress were killed. All three crime scenes had no forensic evidence. Reed makes a comment on the fact that there's no obvious sexual motivation for the kills, which is usually found with serial killers. And if you know criminal psychology, this is a little bit of a spoiler. Just a fun fact. I knew immediately when he was like, I was like, oh, got it.
I didn't. I was along for the ride.
Good. It's a good episode. If you're along for the ride, it's a great episode. Yeah. And then there's paparazzi outside taking photos. So the BAU is invited in, and the team comes to LA to tell them this is the profile of an assassin. There's no evidence, there's no sexual release, and there's no signature. This assassin they're dealing with is specifically a stage 4 assassin. Stage 1 is political. Stage 2 is egocentric. Stage 3 is psychopathic. Stage 4 is major mental disorder, usually delusional. Then an agent... Me.
I'm familiar.
An agent comes in on behalf of his client, Lila, who received a note about the last victim telling her that she owes the unsub. So Lila knew the dead star socially, and she had met with the dead producer who ended up casting the other dead star in her place. And the first murdered actress looks similar to her. So Lila's the link. How fun for her. So
she's like pretty unfazed by that.
Yeah, until she's like, I have to go. And then she's like, I'm not going to be scared. And I'm like, okay, well, girl, calm down. You should be scared. Like, they're coming for you.
There are a lot of valid reasons for you to be upset by what's happening. And she's like, I am going to be young and blonde. And I'm like, yes, great.
It was wild. So the unsub question her and find out that she receives flowers on the 7th of each month with no note. They're red anemones, which are her favorite. So they deduce that this assassin started as a stalker, and it will end with him either killing himself or killing Lila. She's still fairly unfazed at this point.
Super unfazed. She's like, I think it's her manager who says something like, well, she has fans. This is just part of the job.
Yeah. Like this is not part
good
of the job. This is crazy. So this stalker assassin guy has an erotomanic fixation with Lila, the delusional belief that another person, usually of a higher social status, is in love with them. And they akin this to John Hinckley Jr. and Jodie Foster. So Lila is like talking with her manager, and her manager's like, Lila, you should really lay low. And she's like, no, I'm working. I have to live my life. The PA comes to give her a note that was taped to her trailer door that says, I've always been good to you. Why did you go to the police? Okay, so they've infiltrated set on a studio lot.
They are on the volleyball show.
Yes, this is a bathing suit volleyball show in Soundstage 7. Here we go. So the team analyzes the note in an RV. This is not the standard trailer that you would have on this show, but that's fine. They would have had trailers there.
They could have also just gone to a room. It's not.
Yeah.
They're in a building. I'm sure there was a free room.
There's an office. Yes.
What if we put 17 people?
They would have been like, hey, UPM, can you get out of your office? The FBI needs it. And the UPM would have been like, oh, okay.
Admittedly, I haven't been on union projects, but I assume they would be like, offices. The FBI is here. Yeah, I'll move my computer for a second.
Also, I would just like to point out there was no executive producer in this meeting who would have immediately been called in. There would have been network executives and executive producer of the show there to discuss next steps.
It's always weird to work in film and then see it portrayed inaccurately in film.
Yes.
What do you mean? You were here for this.
Yes, you work these. What are you talking about? Wild.
Maybe they were in the RV.
So the team analyzes the note and they decide it's someone that she knows. And they discuss if they should get her off the street or if it's safe enough to keep her in her life. She, again, wants to stay at work. She's decided she's not going to be afraid. So now they're concerned about the manager, since he was the one who took her to the police. Gideon, Hutch, and Elle go to find him. He's dead. No surprise there.
So fast.
So they get Lila to a safe house, thinking that denying any and all access to her will bring the stalker to the forefront. Reed takes Lila to go get some stuff and go over safety regulations, and he sees this interesting piece of abstract art that's a bunch of cut-up photos. Morgan and the LAPD detective follow their best lead, a paparazzo who favors Lila, and they go to his place. They find a bunch of schedules, from the show. They find a bunch of photos of her and now photos of Reed. So now they're going to head out to Reed to tell him what they found at the safe house when the delivery guy on his bike drives by and shoots up Morgan and the detective. The detective gets hit in the shoulder. Morgan does not get hit because he is protected by God because he's so beautiful.
He's got pretty privilege.
That's right.
If only you were prettier, random filler LAPD detective, you would have been fine.
Better. Okay, so then Garcia calls and says that she went through every interview and Lila's never mentioned her love of these flowers. So now they're like, okay, it's someone super close to her. Also, Garcia calls quite a few times in this episode and we see her exactly once. So I don't know what Kirsten's schedule was going on at this time of filming, but they didn't have access to her, or maybe she got sick or something.
Wild.
But that was really weird.
Okay, I thought so too.
Right? I was like, oh, we're never going to see Garcia in this episode. And then she popped in just for the last phone call. And I was like, what is this? So now Lila and Reed are at, the safe house, but I think it's just actually Lila's house. So they're just at Lila's house, but they were going to get her to a safe house. So somehow that plan fell through. Okay, so Lila has decided to go for a swim. Why not? Reed's trying to get her out of the pool and she pulls him in and then they make out, which is such a big deal for Reed who can't talk to women.
It's so funny because he falls in and he goes, oh, Lila, my gun is wet.
I thought you would really like this scene.
It was so straight, this whole scene.
Yeah. And this entire time, someone is taking their photo from the hillside.
It's not far. they keep like cutting back and forth between like the bush and the pool, and it feels like he's like 10 feet away.
Yeah, he's like in the backyard at this point. He's like in the backyard. And so Morgan sneaks up on him and it's the paparazzo guy. They unspool the film and they arrest him for trespassing.
Fair.
Now, they're back inside and she's talking about her past life and Reed's staring at this art piece. And all of a sudden, his crazy brain starts rearranging the
I think
the pieces.
I can see you in this. Like, as if some of them are not half her face.
Right? And he realizes she's in the piece. Things she's talking about are in the piece. And he's like, can I take this apart and I'll put it back together? And so now there's a big art project. It's all old photos and stuff about her life. And they're like, who gave this to you? And she was like, your friend who owns the gallery. And so they go.
His face is in it too?
Yeah. Very strange. So they go to the guy and he was like, I didn't make the piece. And they were like, who did? And he was like, Maggie, the PA.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So meanwhile, back at the house, Lila gets a call from Maggie and Spencer is like, Maggie's the stalker. Maggie's the stalker. And Lila's like, no, she wouldn't. I've known her forever. And he's like, yeah, that's why she's the stalker. And so he calls Garcia. We finally see her. She triangulates the call and she's like, Reed, the call is coming from inside the house. Reed was like, how did she get in? And Lila just goes, she has keys. Like, they're asking you all these things and you're not like, all these people have keys. He's like, you have to change your number. She's like, I'm unlisted. Okay, but the stalker has your number because the stalker fucking knows you. Like, you need to get a dog. I'm allergic. Stop giving out your keys. Everyone has them. Like, can you be safe?
Should be dead. Like, just on principle.
By the grace of God and Derek Morgan, she is not. You know what I mean?
She has pretty privilege. She uses it over and over and over again.
Yeah, just has like opens her eyes, sees it's a new day, and goes from there. Like, it's wild. But so now Maggie has Lila at gunpoint. Maggie turns her gun on Reed. He's able to then disarm her quickly, safely. And that's kind of the end of the thing. Like, she's going to have post-trauma fame from this, which makes her super uncomfortable. And it's like, okay, but like,
she like sort of gets it finally at the end, but not really.
Yeah. And so she and Reed have a cute moment and she was like, maybe I'll call you and like maybe you can call me. And then Gideon, in all of his Gideonness, is like, Reed, let's fucking go, because he can't have anyone be happy. And at the very end, Reed and Morgan have a very cute bro moment about this. Reed liking this girl and how he crossed a line. Definitely crossed a line by kissing a victim that he was supposed to be protecting. Wild. But it was a very cute moment. And that was our episode.
This is my second Criminal Minds episode.
Yes,
and I believe I need to watch more of this show because this also was like, yo, what is happening?
But was it a better experience? Because you had DC snipers.
I did have DC snipers.
And you were not thrilled with the toxicity of the men, of both Hotch and Morgan.
I think for this one, admittedly, this episode is playing into one of my, I would argue, biggest red flag behaviors in that I cannot tell blonde women apart. Like,
very hard to tell both of those women apart.
Yes.
But I also think that was the point because of her fixation with her. She was trying to become her.
I agree, but I couldn't tell. So like Maggie was the whodunit.
Yeah.
Lila was the one being persecuted. And then we saw another blonde woman die. And then also there's a blonde woman on their team.
JJ, but we barely saw her, but yeah.
She was also there. And I was like, I don't know. I'm severely lost. Like,
too many.
So that was hard for me. But I think in terms of like, because this is like a pretty male-centric show, at least from the 2 episodes that I've experienced. Yeah. And so it was pretty weird to see, like, anytime there was a woman on screen, I was just, like, exhausted.
I don't know which one this is. I was
exhausted. I don't know which one this is. But then Lila was so difficult. Like,
yeah.
And she was, like, that, like, up-and-coming, like, Hollywood person playing to that stereotype. But it was like, oh, you, like, don't value your life. Like... or like respect any of these people.
Yeah, she was difficult, but I think in a very real white woman way of like, I'm not going to be afraid. And it's like, okay, but you're putting other people at risk.
Yes.
like your manager, like the crew, like, you know what I mean? All these people.
So many people.
So many people. And it's like, can you just do what they're telling you to do so they can apprehend this guy quickly?
Yes.
And then you can get back to your real life.
What did you think about that? It was like a quick scene when they were on set where like Reed essentially sees her body for the first time. Like, and she like takes like a sip of his Coke.
His Coke? Okay, first of all, let's unpack that scene. I loved his reaction because he never directly looks at her and she's doing it for a reaction. Yes. Like she unrobes in front of him. It's not where you would it's like for him, and he doesn't look at her, and then when she's gone he's like like, because he sees it in the peripheral and he's like and then he's like, don't look at her, and he's like, I should be going somewhere else. Yeah, and so I think it's very cute and innocent.
Oh, it's so he like runs one way and runs the other one, but
he's just like, he's so adorable. And then Morgan's like, okay, dude, but when she takes a drink of the coffee and then is like, ugh, and then takes his Coke without asking and is like, you don't mind, right? And drinks it. I'm like, ew.
Yeah.
First of all, you're in a bathing suit. Like, any carbonated drink is going to make you bloat. So, like, can you think about that for a minute? 2, that's his. Like, now we know how coronavirus actually happened. It was this girl just grabbing Cokes indiscriminately.
It's this woman.
Patient 0, we found her. But I thought that was so, again, it was this idea of, like, the world is hers.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was just so... Reed is such a weird character. I mean, like, his whole thing is just like, I'm young and smart, right? That's his thing.
I love Reed's character. It's so all over the place. And once you get his backstory, you're like, oh, all of this makes so much sense.
Yeah, like, what was the gallery? Were they high school friends or something?
Yeah, and that didn't make sense because that guy then should have been about 10 years older than Reed.
Yeah, he was like the only 12-year-old in our graduating class. And I was like, are you not the same age?
Yeah,
like
that was a little bit incorrect.
But yeah, this episode was much more enjoyable to watch than the one you gave me.
Okay, so but you liked Shemar in this more.
I did.
Gimme more.
Based on that photo, what would you rate him then?
I thought it was funny you chose this photo because I
thought Stacey chose this photo.
Stacey chose this photo. I thought he was so attractive in the final scene with Reed. Yeah. So I mean, he's solid in this for me. I'd give him like a 4.5.
You would a 4? I'd give him a 4 as well.
Yeah.
Again, because I think we could have had more of him. I think there could have been maybe he tackled the paparazzi into the pool and then has to take his shirt off and is then wet. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like the writers weren't giving him enough to work with.
Yes, because this episode did make me want to be like, oh, well, I could like watch this show. The first one, I was like, I'm okay.
like I could skip it. I don't know why these girls are obsessed with this.
I'm like, this is a weird one. But yeah, this one, I think just in the nature of like true crime shows, it's faulty, but like it's charming this time, at least.
Yeah.
It's like, they're just being little guys.
Yeah. Once Prentice and Rossi come on the scene, that's where you're like, oh, this is the cast with the chemistry.
Okay.
And you're like, here it is. And that's around season 3, which is usually when shows hit their stride.
If you can make it that long, it's like, here it is. Now we're sticking.
So let's talk about Robert John Bardo, who was a stalker turned murderer of an actress.
Just like this episode.
I
never know how to do these professionally, but like Robert Bardo, that's our guy, bad guy. Kind of also, a red flag from birth. This man.
Ugly as sin. Can we just?
I mean, when you've done something so bad, it's easy to take digs down. But like when I saw him, especially compared to this like beautiful blonde woman, because I watched the Criminal Minds episode and then I watched the real stuff.
Yeah,
I was like, that's not a beautiful blonde woman.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy looks like he got run over.
They really did him a solid and gave him this very cute girl to be the stalker because it's that idea if like the uglier you get on the inside, the uglier you get on the outside. He is that.
Yes.
Because if you look at him younger too, you're like, oh, he's not bad. And then you see him in court and you're like, oh my God.
Well, I feel like the time that people are like in prison waiting for a court date, they age dramatically. Like something obviously some stuff happens behind bars, but I'm like, whoa, that's rough.
Yeah. Ugh. Okay. So yeah, let's talk.
Yeah, he's
John Bardo.
He's ugly. Sorry. um,
Yeah.
and he's kind of just like a troubled kid from birth. Teachers described him at like 11 as like a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
And
he wrote them threatening letters. He wrote 2 of his teachers very threatening letters, but also he was a good student, like all over the map.
I mean, he was like a victim of like pretty severe child abuse, which is super. I'm anti that.
Sure. But a lot of people are victims and don't.
Representing that population myself. I haven't murdered anyone. Weird choice. Yeah. I know. I have so much potential in my life. Why would I say I wouldn't put solid?
You could. You could.
could.
I believe in you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm an ally.
And so again, I'm so bad with names, but he like kind of stalks someone for a little bit.
Yeah, he's a victim of abuse. They moved around a lot. He's the youngest of 7, and the abuse came from one of his siblings. So they put him in foster care for a while.
Yes.
He had been institutionalized a couple times around 15 to treat emotional problems, and he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which is a mood disorder. And he dropped out of school in the 9th grade to work as a janitor at the Jack in the Box and started stalking Samantha Smith, is her name.
Yes. Who is a child peace activist. So like, I don't know how she got on his radar.
Well, it would have been like someone today becoming obsessed with Greta Thunberg.
Sure. They didn't have Twitter though, so I don't know.
But they had television in the 80s.
I have forgotten about that.
You're very young. She wrote a letter to Mikhail Gorbachev, who was a president of the Soviet Union. This was in the early 80s. And she actually went over to Moscow to have like a talk with him, much like Greta and the UN.
Yes.
To, propose peace. Why they would let a child, but, okay.
Children are our future. And
the children are our future.
If
and
they do it, an adult doesn't have to. So we are relics. We are aged.
I'm one of the ancestors. It's fine. So yeah, that's how he became obsessed with her. And he traveled to Maine at 13 years old to for her homecoming. That's where she lived. And he was like, I'm going to go meet her. And then got stopped by the cops. And
panicked,
he panicked and was like, I've brought too much attention to myself, but also you're 13. Where are your parents? And they sent him back to Tucson, Arizona.
And that's far. How
did he get there?
Yeah. When they were casually and so he went to Maine, I was like, from Arizona? And then they just sent him back. I was like, there are gaps here.
Yeah. And they stopped him over a traffic violation. He's 13.
Yeah.
Did he drive?
Was he the traffic? Was he just standing in the road? It is a theme later. He is a big road stander.
He's a big road stander, you know what I mean?
That's what I've always said about this guy.
That's what I always said. Yeah, it's hard to find real facts about the pre-crime stalkings, of which there were many.
Yeah, you say pre-crime stalkings as if stalking is not a crime. Just
it wasn't then.
Well, less significant concern. Everything that
pre-murder stalking.
Everything that this guy has done is concerning. I feel like when I'm in my true crime rabbit hole and I'm reading these Wikipedia articles, there's always something fun that's had a penchant for bonsai or loved bowling. But this guy's his thing was stalking.
Yeah, his thing was dedicated research.
And everyone's I'm sure nothing will go wrong.
Psychotic,
wild.
This guy. And then after her, did you see who he stalked?
I did.
Okay. Oh, well, okay. Wait. So he started stalking her, and it didn't end with him being turned away. He made more plans to meet her, to stalk her. But then she tragically died in a plane crash in 1985, and he had to pivot.
He's like, oh, well. Yeah, and then Then he turns his attention towards Tiffany and Debbie Gibson.
Yes.
Pop stars.
Yes.
And then it says he couldn't find his way to New York, so he gave up. And I'm like, but honey, you made it to Maine.
Yeah, and I like that it was he couldn't figure out a way in which to meet them. So he was like, I have to move on.
I wish I could do that with any person I'm interested in. I'm like, oh well, I'm good. Like, next one, next obsession.
Right.
Like,
but that's how it starts, is it becomes this obsession, and they think about them. Then they move forward to, I'm going to stalk this person. And it's escalating behavior. And this happens. We see it with serial killers or rapists. They'll fantasize about it first and plan it first until they finally try it.
In a significantly less serious analysis of that, I saw a TikTok that said a crush is just a lack of information.
Correct. Yes.
And so that's kind of what this is, where it's like you just fill in the gaps and like you think they're communicating with you because that's all you can focus on. And so it's like habitual, it becomes habitual. And so it is hard to like release from it, especially if you have these mental disorders and all this history of terrible stuff that this guy has.
Well, and it's funny because there's like levels, I think, of stalking. Like what I call gentle stalking is like, oh, I have a... Correct. It is. My gentle stalking is...
Mine's Instagram.
Yeah.
Mine's social media.
Yeah, mine's writing them a script and sending it to their agent. That's in the middle. That's somewhere in the middle.
I definitely think it's still level 1.
Thank you. That's gentle stalking. But you know what I mean? It's like when you were in middle school and you liked a guy, so you changed the way you walked to class so that you could walk by him in the hall. This is gentle stalking. It's just in like the general vicinity. That's not what this guy's doing.
No, it's like you take one step beyond that and you're like, well, it's still okay. And then you take another step and then you murder somebody.
Yeah. And then you're wearing their skin as a dress. And that's level 5. I think Buffalo Bill is level 5.
I think that's fair.
If we're going to give it maybe a 10. Maybe that's a 10.
I love that it only goes to 5. The first is following, walking different in class, and is a skin dress, and it's only a difference of 4 levels.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Yes. So then he couldn't get to New York, couldn't get to Tiffany and Debbie Gibson. Mark yourselves lucky, ladies.
I know. How horrifying to learn that later. Just be like, oh, he like ran out of frequent flyer miles or something. And they're like, oh, could have been us.
Oh my
And
God.
2 of them? Double crazy.
That's a lot of work.
It's hard.
They could go in opposite directions. You know, what are you going to do?
Who do you choose? How do you have a favorite? I digress.
Well,
I know.
He wouldn't be in a relationship with both of them.
Veronica's bullying me subtly. It's so funny.
Okay, so then he saw a commercial for the show.
Yes.
For a show called My Sister Sam.
I fully thought you were going to send me an episode of My Sister Sam when this started, because I was like, oh, should I like...
I didn't even think about watching one, to be honest with you. That thought never crossed my mind.
You weren't like curious to see?
No, I saw the commercial.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, got that. I understand what that is.
And like, obviously, oh my God, this is a whole tragedy. But like, she wasn't that great in terms of
80s
acting.
sitcom.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was
first
an
of all,
80s sitcom.
80s sitcom. It was her first thing. Now, if we all remember Will Smith in the first days of...
Yep. Nailed it. Yeah, it's very... You're right.
Time.
It is very 80s sitcom-y, but I was kind of like, okay, like we all have... We make choices.
Yeah. But that's the thing with stalking and obsessions, too. It never makes sense to another person. It's just something clicks in the stalker's brain.
Oh, I'm familiar. You can look at my dating history. Like, none of it really
Okay, good.
made
Well,
sense.
I'm glad... that you are here for your intervention. I'm glad we can talk about this openly.
Yeah, and then, I mean, Arizona, much closer to Los Angeles.
Yes, much easier than New York, although New York closer than Maine, so I don't know what his problem was.
We'll never know.
I also like that we're like seemingly advocating for him to have stalked these other 2 women. Just try harder.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well...
Like, if
I thought you cared.
It,
like, I thought you...
Good Lord.
What are our relationship standards? They're transparent in this conversation. I'm like, well, if you're going to stalk me, like...
Please try harder.
We could talk in circles about how far Maine is from Arizona.
I know, really. So he sees Rebecca Schaefer, this young up-and-coming on this show, and he's like, that's my girl.
That's it.
And he writes her fan mail and she writes back. Sometimes they do this.
I feel like especially when you're up and coming, you want to build that fan base, I would assume.
Yeah. But it was personalized, and she was like, oh my God, thank you. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. And for him, it's like, oh, she's into it. She likes me too.
Yes. And she signs it a certain way with like a peace sign and a heart. And later he is able to like pretty much identically copy that when writing a letter, spoilers, from prison.
Yeah.
And that was really eerie to me that it had stuck that hard for him.
Yeah, he's disturbed. So he decides he's going to go to LA to meet her. And he shows up to the CBS lot with a bouquet of flowers and a giant teddy bear. And they're like, you're not on the list. Now, to get onto a studio lot is a lot. It takes a lot of clearance to get on. And those security guards are not fucking around.
No. I accidentally went onto the Nickelodeon lot, though. That was pretty, like, low-key.
Which feels like it should be higher key since they have children working there.
Oh, for sure. I, like, turned in the wrong way, and they were like, you have to, like, go a certain way to get back out. And I was like, I should not be here right now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
How'd you get in the gate?
It was open. The gate was, like, broken that day. And so I was like,
shut up.
I was, like, going to pick something up, and I just, like, but not from Nickelodeon. And I, like, turned in the wrong way. And they were like, how did you get here? And I was like, truly.
Was it a truck? Oh, was it a truck gate?
It might have been. And I just, like, got turned around. And I was definitely on the lot for much longer than I should have been.
Oh, that's so funny.
But usually very difficult.
Yeah, usually very hard to get onto a studio lot. And they had protocol that the executive producers and the person that the, uninvited individual is there to see are notified. But because he was so low key about it, they didn't follow that protocol. And the guy was like, yeah, man, just go on home. And he was like, okay. And so no one knew.
Right.
And then he came back a month later with a knife. Still did not get on the lot.
Yeah, the details of this whole thing are kind of weird because I think it's like nobody really took it seriously until it happened.
Yes.
But like, what do you mean he also had a knife? Like, did he wield the knife? Like, or did he just also had a knife? Weird detail.
I think he just had it on him. I don't think he wielded it, or someone would have been alerted at that point.
Right. So
because again,
I guess he
no
must have been
alerted.
like, I brought a knife that time. And everyone's like, whoa, what the fuck? You had a knife? Like nobody, it was super wild that he's just
and he was keeping a diary.
You're right. Very detailed.
Because when he was with the knife incident, non-incident, when he went back with the knife and he was again not let in. And I've worked on lots. I've worked on shows on lots. I've worked in offices on lots. There have been times when I haven't been able to get in because my badge didn't work or something. And these are security guards I see every day and who I talk to on break. And they're like, we have to call someone to get me through. And I'm like, but you know me.
Yeah.
And they're like, but maybe I was fired yesterday and my badge was revoked.
They don't know.
Right. So that's the level of security that I'm talking about.
Well, I'm sure
that's on
this
these
incident
lots.
probably changed that.
Yeah. And then my badge too was for specific entrances and I couldn't go to the truck entrances without being on the truck list. So it's like,
you just got to be me, apparently.
Yeah. You just have to be Emma and just like, do.
Just look.
Is this where I want to be?
Dumb enough that they're like, you are dumb.
You're not a threat. My God. What are you doing? Let's go.
In my Nissan, I'm just like, I don't know. I got lost.
They probably thought you were a PA, you poor thing. They're like, just turn around.
Imagine that's how I get hired. They're like, we do need another hand today.
You look like you'll take abuse. Come on down. Sign some paperwork. But when he wasn't let in the second time, he wrote in his diary, I don't lose, period.
Scary.
Okay, well, sir, first of all, you do lose. You are a major loser. You're keeping a diary. Like,
I hate that like lots of serial killers and like murderers have diaries and like the first thing a therapist will tell you to do is keep a diary. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
It's a pipeline.
It's a pipeline. Also, they can convict you on what you've written. Don't write it down.
They're like, it's healthy to journal every day. And I'm like, is it? Look at all these people who journal every day.
Yeah.
Billionaires and also serial killers. I don't want either of those titles.
Well, FBI old profiler, Candace DeLong says that text messages and emails will get you the death penalty faster than anything else. Yes. So never write it down, you guys. If you're going to do crime, tell no one and don't write it down.
Pro tip.
I'm dead. So he goes back home to Tucson.
Yep.
And he just builds her a shrine in his room.
Same.
And he starts watching everything she does, collects everything she does.
VHS, baby. Records all that.
Yes. Maybe even Betamax. Do we think he was wealthy enough for the Betamax?
I don't know how his Jack in the Box janitor job was panning out.
That's fair.
Unlikely.
Okay. So just VHSing it up.
I guess so. Imagine he like re-recorded something. I bet that's what really caused him to snap. Is like,
he accidentally
double taped something.
He asked his brother to get him a gun and like told him he was going to take it to California. The brother was like, that's illegal. And he was like, oh, okay.
He like asked his like brother, because I watched some of his brother being interviewed on the stand, and it was kind of like mind numbing to watch this man answer these questions, because they're like, did you think it was weird that your brother asked you to buy a gun even though he's underage? And he was like, he wanted to use it for target practice, but you knew about the shrine. And he's like, I did. And he's like, but you did it anyway. And he's like, yes, I did.
All of them were like, he's just really weird. Like he wrote his sister a letter and was like, if I can't have Rebecca, no one can. And she was like, oh, Robert.
I mean, he's been like weird his whole life.
He has. I guess that's the lesson to learn. Be weird from the get-go, and no one will suspect you of...
No one will see it as escalating behavior, because this is at least his third iteration of doing this shit.
Yes.
So like nobody got hurt before.
TJ Miller has a bit. He wanted to have a weird face in his driver's license, but you're not allowed to make faces in your driver's license. And he was like, but what if I walk into the DMV with a weird face?
Ooh.
And he did it, and he kept it. And then he was like, now this guy can have a weird smile too.
Yeah.
And he did it, and it was on his ID. It's one of the best bits. You can look it up online. It was his ID, but it's, if you start out that way,
thank goodness,
you know,
it's just like a driver's license photo.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. So he was watching all of her stuff, and he sees her new movie, Class Struggle in Beverly Hills, which we should get drunk and watch, because I'm sure is delightful.
It's kill worthy.
Can't wait. But she has a sexy time scene with one of her co-stars, and he got real mad and was like, well, now she's a Hollywood whore and she has to be punished.
Yes. That was weird. That phrasing, being like, she's not a wholesome youth anymore. And I was like,
yeah.
Because he was young, right? He's like 19 by the time this happens. And to be like, now she's a whore. And I'm like, you're 19. What do you...
Yeah. So he takes his gun and he goes to LA and he tries to like get her information from her management. And they're like, no, fuck off. And they're telling this, you know, Rebecca, like, hey, this guy keeps like calling and asking for you. And she's like, I don't know who that person is.
Right.
Then he hires a private detective for $250, who for $1 went to the DMV and filled out a form to get information on Rebecca Schaefer and left with her home address.
I heard that. And I was kind of thinking, one, how is the private investigator not like partially culpable for this? And two, a dollar?
Yeah.
And like the explanation was like, you just have to say what you need. You don't have to prove it.
Yeah.
$1? Why charge for it at that point? Like, are enough people asking them to do this that they're like, these $1 truly? I mean, isn't that what TMZ does? I think I heard.
Oh, is that? Well, I don't think they're allowed to get that information anymore. The DMV's not allowed to give it out.
The rules are different in California. And I again wonder if it's this case, because it is like weird how you can get easy information. In New York, you can just go to like the court and say, I need this case number, and they'll give you the case number, and then you can enter the case number online and it'll tell you everything about the case for like $1. And that's how TMZ gets like New York information easily. Yeah, well, because court proceedings are technically considered public information. And if they're digitized, that's very easy. And this is someone who's trying to write a true crime book. So this is now how I know all this information. Very easy, flat rate. Here it is. The farther back you go, it may not be digitized, which means you have to have an actual clerk go and pull it. And then they have to photocopy the things, and it's
like however many cents per page. And you better know which pages you need because they're not checking.
Yeah. They're like, this is.
And if you want the whole thing, it's almost cost prohibitive. Like what I'm looking to get is over $1,500 if I were to get the full case. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a world in which I can go to the courthouse and sit in a room with the box. You know what I mean? Like you see that in TV. That's not a thing, or I would go do that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it depends on the case and what it is and how much it is.
Yeah. Because there was a pretty public divorce over in my side of pop culture recently, and it came out the day they filed for divorce because there's just someone at TMZ just like checking for who's getting divorced, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how this whole thing is.
If you buy a house, that's public record.
Yep.
So, there's ways around it for sure. Then again, this is the age of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're talking about was very much not. And the DMV is no longer allowed to give out personal information.
Yeah.
No government entity gives out personal information. So, but he got her home information and went to her house to confront her about this on-screen scene. And the altercation went okay. Like he left and things were fine.
Yeah.
And he went for breakfast.
Yeah, he got onion rings.
Breakfast of champions. And he came back an hour later and she came back to the door. She was in the shower and she was like, seriously, what do you want? Like,
yeah.
She's pissed at this point. And I don't know how the cops aren't your first call after he came to your door.
There's a lot of, I will never.
But again, stalking was not a crime at this time.
Right.
So I don't know that there was much they could do even if they were called. They were not called. But he comes back, she comes to the door, and he shoots her twice.
Yep. And
she survives for about 30 minutes at the hospital before dying. And he flees back to Arizona.
Yeah, he flees. And again, the details that we get in this are very weird. He flees like wearing a yellow polo.
Yes.
Right? And they catch him essentially trying to get hit by traffic.
Yes, he is a street stander.
In the road, yet again.
On the 10. On I-10 for people not in California.
And it is easy to get hit by a car on the 10.
Yeah.
Super.
Very major.
I could do it
thoroughfare.
in 15 minutes if I wanted to.
Yeah. It's
insane. It's one of the busiest
places. And they pick him up and he like immediately confessed.
They're like, what are you doing in the road? And he's like, I murdered this person. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah. And then his sister, who has gotten this letter, calls the cops and is like, I think my brother murdered this person. Because this is news at this point, right?
Yes.
That this starlet has been gunned down.
Rebecca Schaefer.
So they extradite him to California where he stands trial. The trial's wonky. So they were going with an insanity defense. He's not insane. They were trying to say he's schizophrenic. He's not schizophrenic.
He's just not.
Schizophrenia is a thought disorder, and they could not plan what he planned. Schizophrenics don't think in that way.
They don't.
So he waives his right to a jury. Yeah, to a juried trial. Yeah. And he waives this right so that he can make sure the death penalty will not be sought ultimately. So he knew going in,
he's
this
like,
is it.
I done goofed.
Whoopsies. That's on me.
Yes.
So Marcia Clark, who will become very famous in about 3 years.
They really dump on her.
Poor Marcia.
Famous for failing to put OJ away.
Not her fault.
Her legacy. But
Babe,
pre-legacy.
She's an amazing prosecutor.
She's great.
And she slam dunks it.
Team, I guess.
No, well,
it's
Johnny Cochran is just an amazing litigator. Is it? So, God, the OJ trial. For people who don't know that much about the OJ trial, I will say the American Crime Story, The People versus OJ Simpson, is very well done. Weird casting choice for Cuba Gooding Jr. as OJ, but other than that, fucking amazing.
It's very good.
And that trial influenced the second trial of the Menendez brothers is also crazy. Hollywood at that time was, and there were all the riots happening, the Rodney King riots, like LA was a powder keg and very much was shown in the court system with those two cases, OJ and Menendez. So
insane.
Wild. But yeah, so he got life without possibility. Love some good karma. He got shanked in prison 11 times. He did survive, but like
11's
love to see it.
Nothing to shake a finger at. That's That's
Yeah,
still
love to see it.
happening. Like, I feel like you've been shanked. If you've been shanked 11 times, you're like, wow, I'm still being shanked right now.
Yeah, you have time to be like, we should reassess our life now. Like, maybe
But he
if I get
doesn't.
through this.
But he
No,
doesn't.
and they have to move him to a different prison. But so we said he's not schizophrenic. So he had contacted Mark David Chapman, who was the man who shot John Lennon. Mark David Chapman was schizophrenic with paranoid delusions. And he had had these paranoid delusions since he was very little. And he had these thoughts of killing someone whenever they were like hypocritical. And he saw John Lennon as this hypocritical figure because he's talking about like, what if we didn't have any possessions? And then he's being photographed on a yacht, you know? And so this idea of love, he didn't feel like John Lennon was living up to it.
Yes.
Again, this is his weird paranoid delusion, which is separate from his schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm.
And just a storm and a half, he shot John Lennon, sat down on the ground, started reading Catcher in the Rye to wait to be arrested.
Yeah. And like I've read Catcher in the Rye. It's like not distracting enough, I would say, from having just murdered John Lennon. It's like good.
So he's making no attempt to evade arrest.
Yes.
Okay, that's a thought disorder. This man left and was like, I gotta get away. Mm-hmm. But he had a copy of Catcher in the Rye with him when he shot her and like threw it on the roof. And he had contacted Mark David Chapman to ask about life in prison before he shot her.
Like, how's it going?
Yeah. Like what? So he knew what he was going to do. He knew where it was going to get him. He had made a diagram of her body of where he was going to shoot her.
Yep.
Like, and even Mark David Chapman's not getting out. Like, he didn't get the insanity defense because he said, no, I know it was wrong, but I had to do it for whatever his delusions were saying, you know? So he didn't get the death penalty because we don't execute mentally ill people, but he's not getting out.
Yes.
Now, the one who did get out, John Hinckley Jr., had this same issue with, Jodie Foster, and he attempted to kill Reagan, and he was locked up in a hospital, also schizzy, but he said that he wanted to become famous to impress Jodie.
That's the way to do it.
Well, fucking John Bardo had said that he, upon seeing Rebecca, wanted to become famous to impress her.
Yes.
Right? And this is also after the era of Bundy. This is about the time where people realized you could get famous for killing people. And then, if you listen to for someone who says that he just was so in love with her or whatever, if you listen to his confessions to like the LAPD, he is so misogynistic and hates her. And he talks about how she has this little girl voice and she sounded like a brat, and how dare she speak to him that way. Like,
it's kind of
what the hell? And that's why he had to kill her.
Never meet your heroes. I think it's like he wanted the virgin.
Yeah. Oh, it's very much the Madonna and whore kind of thing.
This is another you just read the signs, man. He wasn't like, yes, this was going to happen. And
yeah. And because of it, they've changed stalking laws. They changed the DMV thing. But even still, if you got a stalker, there's very little the cops can do.
I just saw a clip from an Emma Stone, Jennifer Lawrence interview. I don't know if you've seen this, but they had the same stalker.
Oh, that's wild.
It's this guy who gets celebrity phone numbers and sends a text being like, hey, Mark, I'm running late. Can you make sure the orchestra is tuned? Like, that's like a text he sends like pretty verbatim. And so there's like all these women coming forward now being like, oh my God, I have gotten this text before. He'll like send an just, can you make sure the orchestra's tuned?
So they think he's like a conductor or something?
They don't know what to think. It's John, the orchestra guy, stalks pretty famous women. I don't know how he gets these numbers. And they like have this really weird, like, what are you gonna do about it attitude, which is horrifying to me.
Yeah. Because really all they can do is like issue
you can like take it to the police, but it's not
restraining order.
Oh yes, restraint.
They can really, once you go to the police, they can file a restraining order, but there's nothing to say he's, you know what I mean? Then he shows up at the door and you call him and they're like, okay, we came and got him. They can't really do anything. They can't like arrest him until he hurts you. And at that point, you're either disfigured or dead.
Right, yeah. It's just like phrased as like a wrong number.
Yeah.
So it's like not for them, like, but it happens like over and over and over again. Like, hey, can you make sure the orchestra's tuned? So it was weird watching this episode and learning about this case, having just seen this interview and being like, wow, it's like not very different. Like, especially now with like even more access and like with AI, like you can essentially make all these fantasies that you have about someone real.
Yeah.
So it would only feed into the delusion more, I would think.
Yeah. Well, it's very much the, parasocial relationship
Yes.
issue, which is what my pilot is about that I wrote for My Gentle Stocky. But this idea of a person that you have in your head.
Yep.
And they're not that person. Like Matthew Gray Gubler is not Reed, but there's probably about 1 million women who thinks that's his personality, or Shemar Moore. This like hero kind of guy. He played him in Criminal Minds. He's playing him on SWAT.
Yes.
David Boreanaz, Angel, FBI agent.
Yes, big bot.
Army guy. Like,
and boy, David's definitely not one to...
Not that person.
Not that
He's
guy.
not that person. And that comes from the don't meet your heroes, right?
Yes.
That's the beginning of it, is they're not the person you've built up in your head. Maybe they are.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they are the most wonderful human, Margot Robbie, but Margot Robbie can also have a bad day.
Yes.
And this girl had a bad day. She was in the shower.
Yeah.
And she was like, leave me the fuck alone. And he shot her.
He's definitely a problem, like, regardless. But like the amount of people who like slacked when it came to like protecting this woman was kind of appalling.
Oh, it's insane. And I think that's why now it is treated so much differently.
Because I think during the court case, they're interviewing someone who like fielded calls to her or something. Like it's this woman in this like red pantsuit.
Yeah. Her management.
I guess so. Yeah. And she's like, well, he did call like 8 times. And I'm like,
and they were like, do you know this guy? And she's like, no, I've never met someone by that name.
And so they just like didn't tell her about it. Just like kept happening. They knew it happened enough to give a number, but not enough to be like, meh. Like.
But again, if you call the cops,
what did they do?
It wasn't even today. What are they going to do?
Yes.
Then there weren't even stalking laws. What are they going to do?
And like how many people were doing the same thing, but it didn't escalate?
Because also, and this episode brings it up, the paparazzi, their job is stalking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So these are also people who are calling managers, trying to get information,
following calendars.
Yeah. But they're not killing people for it, right? Like they hopefully make a kind of symbiotic relationship with this person, because also stars to get roles have to be wanted and in the news and photographed. And that's a little bit part of it. So that's why when you see people like Cillian Murphy, Keanu Reeves, who have such fame and they're off social, they live, very quiet lives by themselves. They are these anomalies. And then more people want to know more about them.
Yes.
And it's very dangerous.
Yes.
Because anyone can put anything to them because there's no public image even. There is no image.
I think about fangirling when we talk about stuff like this, like being a teenager and wanting to know everything about somebody. And then I think about how like nowadays, like just being on social media, I learn stuff about celebrities I don't want to know. Like pretty easily. Like I'm a big Spider-Man fan. And so Tom Holland pops up on my timeline all the time. And I feel like I know too much about his relationship with Zendaya. And I'm not looking for that.
Yeah.
And so like the people that are, I mean, it's just easy. It's horrifying, the lack of privacy that they get.
Yeah, it's a problem.
What do you think
It's a really big problem.
What do you think about the choice? How do you feel about the adaptation into this?
I like that it's a woman. It makes it more interesting. I think women stalkers are more dangerous. We see single white female a lot. I think it's a little more sinister, I will say, when I was going to say scary, but that's the wrong word. It's more sinister when it's a woman.
Yes.
I think it's scarier when it's a man because they just do destruction.
They will. I feel like they will get to violence faster.
Yeah. But I really liked it, especially because they say he all the time, and they say he just defaulting with unsubs until they know one way or the other.
I love that.
But that was the other thing. So not only do assassins and hitmen present with no sexual component to kills, female serial killers pretty famously do not have a sexual component to their kills. So that's one of the tells that it was a woman. Because Eileen Wuornos, there was no sex in her serial murders. So it's one of the things that's only a male part of the profile, but they're so used to seeing that when they don't see it, they're like, oh, hey, lack of sex here.
Yeah, they did say it's more apparent of what is absent with this case.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
Which is a big thing for profilers, is they look at what's in the scene and what is not in the scene that should be.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I liked it.
Because I feel like obsession kind of feels like a more feminine trait.
Yes.
So it was interesting that like the case we talked about was like a man, but the show was a woman. And it was like,
you'll see all over social media when girls are like, oh no, I stalked this guy for 6 months and then he thinks he pursued me.
Yes.
But I figured out where he was going to be and put myself in his way.
Wild.
This is a very normal woman thing to be like, because men are so visual, they're like, if he sees me enough, it'll become ingrained, like something. Yeah. I don't know. And I don't know where we learned that.
And that's exactly
where did
what
we
this
learn
case
that?
is. Like she was just on TV and he's like, yep, that one.
Yes, and that is very male. So most stalkers that you do hear about, so intrusive stalking, we'll say, not level 1 gentle stalkers, are men, and they're scary. I think females tend to have parasocial relationships in their own mind with like fictional characters, less so than the stars.
Are you a Mr. Darcy girl?
I was about to say, I want a Mr. Darcy or I want a Mr. Knightley, right? We have these Jane Austen characters. And then...
I hate that I knew that. I was like...
Of course.
My girl wants a Darcy.
Like, I'm probably an Emma, which means I need a Knightley. So it's fine. We've really devolved. But what that means is women, they don't possess their crushes like men do. Like he had said, if I can't have her, no one can. That's not a female thing, because I think they're usually so lost in creative worlds. Anyway, we're taught quickly to like be readers, be writers,
be thinkers,
be softer things. Yeah. And yeah, so I do think it's interesting though, because females and men stalk differently. I think everyone has participated in gentle stalking.
Absolutely. I mean, I think now, and what I've been saying, and it could totally be incorrect, I get my facts from weird places. I think stalking technically is 3 unwelcome interactions from somebody.
Yes. So yeah. So how I say gentle stalking, you're not making contact with the person.
I see. It's more like aloof.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's that I'm going to change the way I walk to class so that we walk by each other in the hall.
Less in a bush, more.
More in the hand. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, stalking is defined as repeat negative or invasive interactions from one party to the other. So I've technically never stalked someone. I have done my share of gentle stalking.
I have not technically stalked someone, but
Yeah, so that's good to know.
I was like, no. I'm a triple texter.
So there's your red flag. There it is. Your beige flag.
I'm like, I got more to say.
I'm a repeat texter as well. And yeah, and I would consider gentle stalking to be like internet stalking, Instagram stalking, keeping up with those kind of people. So again, it's not dangerous in any way.
There's a difference between like checking a page or setting alerts, though. You know, that's...
Yes. And setting alerts is one step farther. My alerts are gross. I'm going to tell you that much. I have to figure out how to turn them off. It took me a long time to figure out how to turn them on. I was working on an independent documentary about the alt-right. So all my Google alerts are like Richard Spencer, David Duke, KKK. And I'm like, I don't want every day.
Red flag.
Every day I get 5 alerts about the alt-right. And I'm like, how do I turn this off? I should have made notes when I turned it on about how to turn it off.
Red flag. That's so horrifying.
Yeah. So yeah,
mine and all these go off.
It has happened.
They're like,
But that's the thing too, though. Writers are like major stalkers of depending on whatever they're working on. I knew nothing about this guy that I wrote this pilot for, except that I really enjoyed his work. And then it became a study of parasocial relationships. And all of a sudden, me and my writing team had to find out everything we could about him. And I was like, I don't like this. Like, it's creepy and weird.
Became the art.
But it's also like,
but we can clock that.
My favorite thing I've ever written. Oh yeah, and it's written as this is creepy and weird, and yeah, but it's like one of my favorite things ever. Very proud of it. Very proud of our stalking abilities. But people would text me, like my friends who knew I was working on it, and be like, did you hear this about him? Did you know this about him? And I was like, okay, I don't have to do any stalking. People
do it for you.
Just getting it from
That's
from
so
researchers.
funny.
We'll see how much of this stays in.
All of it. Don't cut it. We could talk about mine.
Anyway, yeah, women are crazy. We're all just crazy. But men are scary. So
yeah, which one do you choose? I choose the non-binary. They have yet to identify how their insanity shows, I believe, and I'm curious.
they don't have to. So here's the thing. I think insanity comes from a place of privilege. The non-binary are too busy fighting real battles.
It's true.
To make them up in their mind.
Well said.
But the minute they are integrated seamlessly, we're going to get our non-binary serial killers.
God bless.
And I'm ready for it. Representation matters.
Once someone identifies as
I've always said it. I'm an ally.
Ally. I have a story to tell you.
Oh my God.
Not here.
Okay. Great. Well, we'll tell that one offline. Emma, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm
again
so thrilled to be your second date.
For everyone else, like, subscribe, download, rate the things, do the things, tell your friends. Tell your friend about us. Follow us on Instagram. We're also on the TikToks and X, formerly Twitter, for however long that lasts. Join us next week for another episode of Criminal Gines.